Welcome everyone here. Louder. A little louder in the back.
A little louder in the hallway.
Do you want to get a little louder again? That's just it. Okay. Should make sure people here in the front aren't deaf either. All right, everyone in the back can hear well? Thank you, everyone. People are also welcome to move here closer to the front. We do have a lot of space here in the front as well if people want to move up. We don't bite, please. The traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people. And we just wanted to, when you're meeting individuals here this evening, we know that there's many people here from different countries, from different places that are coming in from all over the world. Some of those countries do have colonial histories. So we do ask that when you are engaging with other individuals, one of the conversations that are always good to start to talk about is the specific Indigenous communities that exist in your respective countries and how we can better ameliorate those relationships here, especially in Canada, given our history. Moving forward, we'd like to go forward with truth and reconciliation, and in that same spirit, we do encourage everyone here from whichever countries they're from to engage in those conversations, which are sometimes often difficult to be having. So as you do meet new individuals this evening, please, we do encourage those conversations to take place, and we consider here Impact Hub to be a space where people can have those conversations and continue to ameliorate the relationships that we have with our Indigenous peoples. A couple of things to start off here, if you haven't realized already. Our bathrooms are just on the outside, so just on either side of the elevator. If you guys need to go to the facilities, the washrooms are on either side. There's food as well. If you guys haven't had poutine, it's a Canadian delicacy here, so please feel free to have as much poutine as you guys want there. There's many boxes there in the back. And we do also have drinks in the back, courtesy of Stray Dog, who is a local brewery out in the east end of Ottawa in Orleans. So thank you to them as well for providing our drinks for the evening. One thing as well, for the poutines that have a red ticket, those are the ones that are vegan. So we just wanted to let everybody know about that as well. If you guys have any dietary restrictions, they're the ones marked with a red ticket in particular. To introduce myself a little bit, my name is Doug, and I work here as the operations lead at Impact Hub Ottawa. So welcome to my humble second home, away from home. Impact Hub Ottawa here is a community of co-working spaces and communities from all over the world. We're a network of over 100 different impact hubs that exist, and really our purpose here is to both inspire, enable, connect, and try to solve the issues of different entrepreneurs, different advocacy organizations, to be that space for different individuals who come from all walks of life, to try and create a central hub and a space so that that community can gather. And so in the spirit of the Open Government Partnership Summit, we really wanted to be part of this particular event because it very much speaks towards the values and the spirit that Impact Hub really embodies. And so in that same spirit, the Open Government Partnership Summit was really something that we wanted to be a large part of. With that, I'll give it here to Gabe to actually go through our agenda for the evening. Gabe?
Thanks, Doug. Sorry for a bit of a late start, but thank you all for being here. It's really awesome to have such a crowded room of folks from I know from all over the world. So the purpose, could you ride the volume for me a little bit? The purpose of this event tonight is to bring people together who are interested in civic tech, that are the great group of people that we know are going to be in town for the OGP Summit. This is our agenda for tonight. The bulk of the evening is going to be the feature event this evening are lightning talks that are coming from several folks from both locally and internationally. And then afterwards, we'll be doing announcements. So if you're someone who is trying to connect with people around a certain topic, if you've got a question to ask of the group, they won't be able to answer it, but you can at least ask the question. We'll be having a roaming mic, so prepare a 20 seconds max announcement or question or people you'd like to connect with, and we'll be doing that after the presentations. And then after that, we're going to hang out. We can stay in this space for a little while, and then we'll be moving off to a nearby place for to continue our conversations and stuff. I want to thank Impact Hub Ottawa for hosting us tonight. Thank you, Doug and Katie and everyone here. Also, Ottawa Civic Tech, the local civic tech group, who have given up their regular Tuesday evening meeting to allow us to run this. And so thank you to them. You'll meet some of those folks later. Also, thanks to our sponsors, Extreme, Stackstorm, Tech for Good, and of course, Stray Dog. Thank you very much to our sponsors. Give us a round of applause for that. And so just a little bit about us. So I'm Gabe Sani. I'm the Executive Director of Code for Canada. We're a nonprofit about 2 years old, and our work is to help enable and promote civic tech in Canada. We describe our work, we're part of the larger Code for All network of similar organizations around the world. We describe our work here in Canada as helping to build digital capacity in government and helping to build civic capacity in the tech and design community. Our biggest program is the fellowship, and that's where we embed digital experts into teams in government to both help them build digital capacity and also deliver a new digital government thing. We have a brand new cohort of fellows. Our third cohort of fellows, these 12 fellows started yesterday. They're spending the next 4 weeks onboarding with us in Toronto before they get deployed out into their government teams later next month. And you're going to hear from some of our current fellows who are now about 7 months into their fellowship a little bit later. So thanks for coming tonight. We're very happy to have you here. I'm a little bit curious to know who's in the room. So can we just, for a moment, if you wouldn't mind, I'm interested in knowing who here is from Ottawa. If you can put your hand up if you're from Ottawa. Okay, cool, good representation. Who here is from other parts of Canada but not Ottawa? Okay, great, a really good sample there too. How about people who are not from Canada, who are visiting, who are in Canada? Cool. Thank you so much. And if we can run with that for a little while longer, I'm interested in knowing who here works in government. Woo! Right on. Okay, cool. Good mix. And how about nonprofit NGO sector? Okay, sweet. And then who had a hard time answering that question? Very good. Okay. So we knew that the OHP Summit would be bringing a really great group of people to town. It was a great opportunity for us to highlight some of the great civic tech work that's being done internationally as well as locally. And so that was really the rationale for this event, which you know we threw together with help from a lot of friends and partners. And so. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you to the presenters whose work is sort of a sample of some of the amazing work that's happening in the civic tech movement internationally, and which has been a huge inspiration for us here in Canada in the civic tech movement and at Code for Canada. So that's enough for me. I'll ask for all of the presenters, if you're a presenter and you're not already in the front, please come to the front. We're going to want to make this pretty snappy. So come on up. We'll make room for you. And now I'm going to hand it back to Doug, our fabulous MC.
Thank you, Gabe. Much appreciated. So I think we're going to start off, all the presenters are here around. I think I see most of them around in eye distance, if nothing else. But I do believe we're going to start off with Julia, right? Perfect. Yeah, so I just want to introduce Julia here, please. Julia de Carvalho.
We just have to change the computer.
Quick switch. Oh.
Hi, everyone.
So Julia, we just want to say a couple things here. She's like the representative of the Open Government Agents in Shared Management Forum in Sao Paulo, and the CEO of Fast Food Politica, and an organization that uses games to play and promote civic education and engagement in Brazil. Thanks, Julia. Please, we give her just a hand.
There's some Brazilian people here? No?
I'll be one.
Because I'm going to need help in the translation. My English is not so good. Can we go? So we're going to talk about two things. One is this NGO that is about political games. So board games, card games, then explain how the public process works in Brazil. So people can interact more with the system, because we now in Brazil we cannot talk about politicals without fighting. With the family, with our girlfriend, boyfriend, and everyone, we just fight a lot. And the game is a strategy, so we can understand the process in a different way, and how do I say, and to work in a strategic way, because sometimes we are just looking to our opinion that the result is not what we want. In the end, if we don't know that, it's very toxic to work like that. Please come back. So this is the logo, do you say logo, of the organization. There is a hamburger, sorry. Have you thought about learning the rules of the political system in a fast and fun way? This one is our parliament. And when you make the parliament less rigid, it becomes a hamburger. So, can you please pass this? So, this is the deputies chamber. This one is the Senate. So that's right. So why we exist? Our mission is to make more accessible and visible rules that determine the functioning of the process. So I'm going to tell a little story so you guys understand why is that crucial in Brazil. Vai passando direto, que não vai dar tempo de colocar. So we are open educational resources. All the games are free. You can access in our website, but we also distribute them. Pode passar direto. Tá lento, né? I can send this presentation after to you guys access, but it's the platforms, so you can download. Ele tá lento na informação. It's slow to fast. We work with a lot of lines of games. I'm not going to talk because it's not going to have time. I want this picture. So, in 2015, we are having a huge problem that people were in streets fighting for everything. So, there were the red ones that wanted the government to stay, and the yellow ones that didn't want to, the Dilma Rousseff stay. So, we make like a puzzle and a basketball game so people can understand what was responsibility of the federation and what was responsibility of the municipality and the estadual, sorry. And then you have like balls that you put, like piscina balls. And so you put and you realize, oh, not everything that I wanted to be better is Dilma Rousseff capacity. And also here we learned like about the impeachment process. So when people were in the streets saying, "Go, get out, government," we say, "Okay, so please tell us who is it in each cargo." Charges, yes. So then when it started the impeachment, people realized that who is going to be like vice president, it wasn't who they wanted to be. So everyone just give up who played the game. So we have like, this is an example to say that a lot of things that go wrong with Brazil is because we don't have access to the codes that maintain the system. And now I'm going to pass to the other presentation because not going to have time. This is Open Government Agents. So it's a program of municipality of São Paulo that we have civic technologies that translate the open government into practice. Because young people of the territories, they invent a lot of technologies and they apply in their communities, but they don't have visibility. So this program is making all these technologies be resources that can be multiplied. Please pass. Please pass. Please pass. This pass. It's not we don't have time. This pass. This one is like examples of workshops. So we have like games. Festival of Politics was one of these workshops, and then we have like LGBT, public politics. So how to access them, budget in a different way, like how to. This word I don't know. Enegrecendo os espaços da política. Like how to.
Develop.
Someone can help me? No.
Develop.
What?
Develop. Access. Increase.
Yeah, like how non-white people can be, like how political can be less white. That's it. I'm sorry. This political is very good, but people doesn't know the political, so she's dying because he's being threatened. So we need help to like multiplicate this political in São Paulo. So please tell to people about this politics. And I have games, so who wants to play?
All right.
This one.
If anyone wants to play some games afterwards, please do those right here at the front. So our next presenter is going to be Sean Boots, a local public servant here in Ottawa, and one of our great organizers here at Ottawa Civic Tech. So please give a hand for Sean Boots.
Thanks everyone for being here tonight. So I'll try to walk you through this, but I'm going to quickly talk about one of the projects that we did here at Ottawa Civic Tech over the past couple of years related to government contracting data, which for people here in the room is probably very exciting. For people it's exciting, but for contracts, they're awesome. So this is a volunteer-run project to analyze government contract spending, so money that the government gives to companies, but to try to look at that at a whole of government level, not just like one department at a time. So we had two different data sources. One was a series of often very old government websites that have individual contracts published on them since about 2005. And the other one was a new open data set that had it all in CSV format, which is really easy to analyze, but only had a couple of years of data. And so really it was about taking websites that look like this and turning them into data that we can actually analyze. And this is the open data set that is published on the Open Government website, which I'm sure you'll see a lot of this week. And we thought, hey, let's just take all of the published Government Canada contract data and put it all together, which seems easy. Answer your favorite game show music here as 2 years went by as we struggled with this. Writing a lot of different website scrapers for departmental websites that were really similar, but just different enough that you had to do it individually, one per department. Over the course of the project, we scraped just over 600,000 contract web pages. Had a lot of interesting adventures with, because this data was all clearly sort of input manually into these websites, different sort of date formats, different variations on the names of companies like IBM, IBM Canada, IBM Canada Limited, IBM with dots between the I's and the B's and the M's. Every variation you can think of. Duplicate entries, sort of like amendments to old contracts that you had to sort of like piece back together, figuring out how to like analyze multi-year contracts. And what was interesting, and this is sort of an interesting takeaway for people working in open data, is that as departments were moving to the centralized open data set, which is actually really great, they usually weren't bringing their historical data with them. So you kind of had the websites for all the data up to 2016, and then they stopped. And then you had the open data set for all the data from 2016 onwards to today. And so if you wanted to look at the entire historical picture, you had to get both. And since we started the project, about 9 departments actually took their old websites offline. So we scraped this data, and then now the websites aren't even there anymore. And so it's just really interesting. We had to sort of like get this data in before the data no longer existed. And now our data that we've sort of publicly published is technically the only public source of the historical data. So we finally finished 2 weeks ago. Team effort by everyone involved. It's about 1.2 million rows of data, which for me is a lot of data, and for friends who are in data science are like, oh, that's so tiny. So, yeah, a lot of steps to sort of analyze and clean and group the data together. These are just some sort of very surface level takeaways. This is the total number of contract or amendment entries by department by fiscal quarter, and so you can see what people sometimes call March Madness, which is at the end of the government fiscal year. People spend all the rest of their budgets Q4. So it's very interesting, just sort of at first glance. This is the total value of each department's contracts by year. For example, public services and procurement spending $3.6 billion last year. Although this chart makes it look like it goes a lot higher over time, and that's a bit exaggerated because the data, because of the historical data issues, actually sort of isn't as well covered as time goes backwards. So it looks like contracts have increased more than they have, so it's just interesting to think about what's the quality of data, especially historical data that we have access to. And these are some, it's probably hard to see from back there, but these are some of the biggest companies in the list, just sort of like the top 10. Some names that are familiar, I'll send a presentation out on Twitter afterwards, but tech companies, property management companies, defense contractors, you know, Canadarm, building spaceships and stuff. Lots of interesting things. Government contracting is so interesting, and there's such a long tail of everything from like building satellites to like gardening outside of a Coast Guard office. So it's like, you see all sorts of stuff in the data set. And a few sort of takeaways for people working on open data, none of this will be surprising, but historical government data is sometimes public but not open. Those websites back from 2005 are a good example of that, where the data is technically public in terms of like transparency, but you can't actually analyze it without doing 2 years of work or so to put it all together. Likewise, if you're doing an open data initiative, convincing people to take the time to bring in the historical data is really useful to make this kind of analysis easier. We had a lot of data quality issues that we noticed, and that really comes down to having feedback loops so that you have people who are, you know, if you're putting open data out there, that you have people who are consuming it, looking at it, finding out if there's any issues. And this is just, well, I'm here on a soapbox. Public servants definitely need better analysis tools that aren't just Microsoft Excel. So if you're a CIO in the room, get like Python and RStudio onto your defense computers. It's super worth it. And there's actually an international standard called the Open Contracting Data Standard. Is anyone from the OCDS here in the room tonight? Because you're awesome, and you would make doing this kind of work a lot easier. And lastly, communities like Ottawa Tech are a really great home for this. Have lots of neat people with really interesting experience in web scraping, data analysis, visualization, you know, how to set up things on DigitalOcean. So if you're interested, here's the link. It's goc-spending.github.io. You can take a look. You can download the combined clean data set, do your own analysis, find cool stuff. And a big thanks to everyone who's involved in the project.
Thank you very much, Sean. Sean is one of the founders, actually, as well, of Ottawa Civic Tech. And while he'll be very humble as a man, he was also on CBC Radio as well for another one of the projects that he's done. So you can ask him about the meeting cost calculator at some point as well. Yeah. Give it up for Sean one more time. So our next speaker is Tariq Nashnash, coming in from Morocco. So he's actually the founder of ICT for Dev, which is a research center based in Morocco, and the CEO of GovRight, which is a social enterprise. So Tariq, I'll give it to you.
Thank you. Alright guys, so actually I want to talk to you about one of our latest projects that's kind of interesting and raising lots of challenges. So actually I'm going to learn from you guys afterward, because I'm going to share with you what I'm doing today. So basically we are dealing with this challenge of evaluation. Everybody's talking in Morocco today about monitoring and evaluation, and you go to the government side and the government is celebrating. We did a lot of progress on whatever action plan they wanted. You go to civil society and they say it's not enough and we're demanding more and more and more. You go to the international organizations, and basically they're setting up some guidelines, they share some practices. So in a way, today we are lost on this dilemma that we need to do evaluation, but we don't know exactly how to do it. And then when you go to OGP, we start talking about like the co-evaluation. And then we start asking who is the co and how we do this co-evaluation. Is it the government? Is it civil society? How to do both? And then OGP comes up with standards, OECD comes up with standards, the World Bank comes up with some standards, etc. So we thought, okay, instead of dealing basically with this nuance of like it's a political game and it's a kind of a linguistic discussion, let's move forward with like more science-based, evidence-based evaluation. Let's start promoting data-driven evaluation. Let's start looking how can we have an evaluation based on quantitative methodologies. In a way, also push for pushing the administrators and the data owners through like tools that are light, that are intuitive, that are easy to use, and also bring the grand public, the big general public, to start reading this information, analyze it, and kind of contribute to it. So what we did basically is we launched, we looked at the action plan, the Moroccan action plan of OGP, and by the way, we just joined in 2018, which is last year, and that's why we are in all this dilemma. So it's new for Morocco, but probably we're going to learn from you guys and how you guys do monitoring and evaluation in a more like scientific way. So we started 2018, we have an action plan, and then we said, okay, how can we evaluate if it's good or not? And we don't want to wait till the end of the action plan, 2 years. I want to know right now how we're doing. So in a way, we launched the plan and we said, we're going to summarize this evaluation question into one number. So as it is today, we say we are 48%. If you go to the website, gouvernement we have 48% of the progress made on the action plan. And the way we do it, all right. Oops. So the way we do it is basically we look at the action plan. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the OGP methodology, but an action plan is split into some big axes or sectors. We look at each sector and say, okay, each sector has made progress in certain percentage. And the way we calculate that is basically we look at the planning of every single commitment, and we start following how much progress is made. So in a way, we are doing like planning monitoring, and based on that we do percentages and do weighted averages and start getting those numbers up. So you can think of it as a tree of numbers, where if you look at from the bottom, the activities are monitors, and we get numbers with the weighted average that goes up, so we can get a number to every commitment, how much is done, and that numbers goes up to know what axis, how much progress is done at the axis level. Okay. Right, I should be running and talking to you. Right, so in a way to get that big number in a way. So what gives us is basically the achievements after 1 year. It gives us like one standard common language to talk about evaluation that's open for civil society and for the government. In a way, we set up the standard and agenda of how to do evaluation. Also, it gives us big decision makers, big CSOs and ministers, etc., like a global assessment. This is one number that we can talk about, but also enables those like managers to closely monitor at the micro level the progress. So in a way, we created a dashboard to identify progress, identify delays and blockages to report if there is any issues that we need to push forward without waiting to the big evaluation that happens like in a yearly way. So what we think, basically on that, is already a big celebration for 1 year progress in Morocco, but the way we look at it, it's a start, it's not sufficient. Why? Because today, if we get 100%, that doesn't mean that Morocco has an open government. In a way, basically, because you can implement whatever you want, but it doesn't have impact on citizens. So what we're really looking for the future commitment is we need to change drafting committee to be impact-driven and not action-driven. So in a way, we need like more coherence on the action plan itself, so it will have a global impact rather than what we have today, which each commitment is like going loose in its own way. And also, we think that civil society should be playing this role of pushing the agenda of more coherent action plan. So what we have today is basically we scaled up this methodology. We got like other governments and civil society ministries to say, yes, let's use it. Basically, we do it for anti-corruption, for e-gov, for digital strategy. But we also built like one generic platform to be reused, an open source platform to be used by anyone. So I'm not going to talk how was progress, but like the question we have today is basically how can we integrate AI into do better evaluation on the model. So if you guys are interested on the topic, let's talk about it afterwards. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is
Adriana.
Yeah, there we go. Adriana coming in here from Germany. She's the manager of the Open Knowledge Foundation for Type Fund, as well as the co-founder of WePublic. Adriana, please.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I only arrived 3 hours ago, and in Germany it's 3 a.m. in the morning, so sorry. Yes. But I want to tell you about the Protex Fund, why it's a remarkable program, at least for Germany, what challenges we face, and what it is in general. So yeah, I work for the Open Knowledge Foundation in Germany, in Berlin. Michael here is my colleague. And I lead the Protex Fund. Oh, thank you. Perfect.
I thought that's better as a backup, right?
Yeah, I don't have slides. So what is the Protex Fund? It's a joint program by the Open Knowledge Foundation and the German Federal Ministry for Education and Research.
Oh, cool.
And what it does is funding civic tech projects, which is really cool. So it started in 2016, and it will be up and running until 2021 at least. And yeah, we fund about 120 projects so far in the fields of civic tech, data literacy, security, and infrastructure. We have 2 rounds of applications each year, and about 25 projects get accepted. They receive about 50,000 euro for 6 months software development sprints. And the only hard requirement is it needs to be open source, it needs to be in the fields of civic tech and so on, and you need to be based in Germany because it's Germans' taxpayer money that we spend. So, yeah, that's the current status. It is a remarkable project because before the Protex Fund, public money was spent completely differently in Germany. You couldn't apply as an individual, you could only apply if you had a bigger organization, if you were a university or a research think tank, some sort of institution. And with the Protex Fund, we kind of hacked the public money funding in Germany in order to make it accessible for individuals, for people that work voluntarily on civic tech projects. The German government agreed in doing that because they understood the way how they fund projects at the moment isn't really innovative. Because if you give out a lot of money for 2, 3, or 5 years to a big research think tank, they probably won't come up with something radically new. Because you need to tell them, well, in 2 years we will have this, in 3 years we will have that, and that's not how innovation works. Innovation is trial and error. So the Protex Fund is only 6 months software sprints, so if it doesn't work out in the end, no one's going to come to you and be like, give me back the money. That's not the deal. The deal is, you have a good idea, you're a cool team, you just get the 50,000 euro and you do what you want. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. But because it's open source, it doesn't really matter, because if you make mistakes, another person will be able to look it up and have a look at your source code and be like, okay, maybe if I do it a little differently, then it might work out in the future. So that's how it kind of changed the way we spend public money in Germany. At least this one project does it. What we see now as the kind of challenges we face, though, is that sprints are good for innovation, but they're not really good for sustainability. Especially some civic tech and infrastructure projects, they have a cool, innovative idea, but then you need maintenance, and then you need to scale your project, and you need to keep it up and running. And we're working on this now, because what we see is after 6 months, when we stop funding those cool teams with their ideas, they drop. and then they have a really hard time to find follow-up funding because there isn't really much that you can apply for in Germany. So this is the biggest challenge we have. But also, what we want to see is many more programs that work like the Protex Fund, that kind of identify what the government wants. They want to fund innovation, and what we want is supporting the civic tech community, and then bringing those two ideas together, and in this way making it a win-win situation, makes programs like the Protex Fund possible. And in the process, the government sees the important work that is done from the civic tech community in Germany, and now they start to think how they can maybe set up a follow-up funding program that makes it possible for those civic tech projects to survive. So yeah, maybe sometimes you need to start with this little hack, and then on the way you see other possibilities opening up, and this is what we do in Germany right now. And if someone wants to set up a Protex Fund in another country, please come talk to me and we figure out a way how to do it. Thank you.
How's the time?
So our next speaker is coming in here from Taiwan. He's actually a member of Taiwan's .0 movement and the co-founder of Protex.
It's all good.
Go for it.
Okay, hi, I'm William. I prefer William. And this. I'm happy to share with you. We're an open source project, and we made a chatbot. We find against that disinformation, misinformation, like so-called fake news, like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and Skype. Why somebody would like to share something, and it's most popular in Taiwan. The most popular app in Taiwan is called Line. Well, Taiwan is a country that its population about 23 million, but users in Taiwan use Line as their personal social platform. It's about over 21 million people. Over 90% of Taiwanese people use Line as their social platform. So a lot of people is in closing chat room. They only receive messages from echo chamber, and people are restricted to their closing chat room because the elders are more addicted to the social media. But people pay attention to information that fits their conclusions and ignore information that doesn't. So COFAT tried to tackle that with chatbot. Therefore, a user is sending a message to the chatbot, and whenever they send it, they are in doubt, they can forward to the message to our chatbot. And the chatbot will answer that with our fact-checking report. All the fact-checking reports are the instant message they receive, and to our editors. We are a voluntary project, so all the editors will write the fact-checking report to the misinformation disinformation. We also make a button if the user finds it useful, and they might reply also, hopefully, forwarding the chatbot's answer back to this closing chat room like this, share to my friend. Or maybe he or she think that he can be a better job, and they can submit a new reply. The project starts at the lower half of 2016. As the other co-founder Johnson pitched the idea in our Garbage Zero hackathon. So really thanks to Garbage Zero, our user base grows steadily, and recently our users grows to 100,000 users. And how do the chatbot know what to respond? The database is comprised of users submit instant message, and the editor and the fact checker will reply. When the user sends a new message that isn't found in our database, then we will ask if they want to submit this to our data. And before that, we will ask the user to explain why they think this message is hot. and what their goal in mind. And this information is helpful for editors to see if they reply this precisely, because we will think that more people ask is more important. And we believe this is essential for media literacy. With users' reason and a clear consent in place, the submit message is stored and displayed in our website, like this. And the general public could also browse his website to reach any information about that tracking. And we also have a tool that the bottom right, and it can be all English by Google translation. So when the code file is flowing with malicious editors, it happens. So therefore, people won't come back if they lose their trust to this project. So we made it all our source code open. We write documentations and hold workshop last year in Government Summit to teach people how to run a code file just by their own laptop or own computer. Also, we distribute our current database, and both the message and the reply data collected so far to public domain under CC0 license. So it's available to everyone. We open all our member meeting notes and all design decisions so that people get to know why we design code like this and such information into it. So we made a toolkit, and it's all English, so it's essential if anyone can run their own code back. So we released the Java on our website users report, so as covid0.tw/analytics. And it is connected on Google Analytics under the hood. And you can get the most asked messages in a period of time, and it's our ecosystem. We make a gift to give away to our editors, make a game experience, like a gamification. That's a monster fake on the table. But also we make our contribution all visible. That's made. I will shout, I will cry also, hey, this week there are a lot of people that giving their contribution. So that's how we do that code like all open source. Thank you.
This year's co-hosts of the fellowship that Gabe was talking about earlier. So we have here Kaylee and Siobhan, who will be talking about their projects that have been working here with the Public Service Commissions of Canada. Please, we'll give it to both of you.
So what we're going to talk about today is how we work in the open, and just give you a little context on the project that we're working on, and then also let you know that we are running product demos later at the back, so if you want a full look at the product, please come talk to us. We're wearing matching red jackets. So just to kind of go back to what Dave was talking about, Code for Canada embeds people like us into the government for 10 months. And so we are in month eight of our fellowship, so we're almost done. And one of the main goals that we've been brought here to do is to build capacity within the government by introducing modern best practices and, you know, helping governments move forward with development, design, product management, all of those things. And so what that looks like to us is we talk about introducing human-centered design practices, working iteratively, failing forward, removing barriers, building trust, working in the open, and really showing what's possible for governments. So our challenge when we were brought into the Public Service Commission was to help them create a digital platform to assess managerial candidates. For those that don't know, the Public Service Commission is sort of the middle step between applying for a federal job in Canada and getting assessed to potentially get placed in a job. And so the current test experience is done entirely by paper and pencil. It talks a lot about modern management practices like memos and faxes and in baskets. And so we decided that we need to figure out a way to actually represent real managerial work. So you can see here, it's currently a supervised paper test. We have been working with a team of psychologists who have new content. And what we're doing is building a new platform that will eventually enable the Public Service Commission to offer testing remotely, which is pretty cool because Canada is a very large country and there's only 5 test centers across the country right now. So there's a couple of really specific things that we had to consider when we took into account what we were going to build. So the first is that the test is meant to simulate a real inbox. So we have to have it look like an inbox, it's task-oriented, it's open-ended questions, it can't be scored by a machine, it has to be scored by a human. But most importantly, it's the first product that the PSC is building that has to meet modern web accessibility standards, because in 4 days, the new legislation for accessibility in Canada comes into place and their products are now considered open. And again, it needs to be browser-based because eventually it's going to be the first test that's taken remotely. And so our assumption was that the test overall is really not helping candidates show their best sort of experience, and they are getting really frustrated, they're underperforming, and there was actually some information showing that they were kind of taking themselves out of the running because they would get into a situation, see this test, and say, I don't think I really want this job. I don't know that I want to do a lot of faxing. And so one of the big things that we did was we conducted user research for the first time at the Public Service Commission, and we did that by talking to people across the country who were existing and prospective managers in the public service to get a sense of what kind of tools they were using and how their current experiences had actually impacted their assessment. So you can see here, we sort of talked to people all across the country, which is really great because the experience of working in government is very different outside of the National Capital Commission.
When we first got into the Public Service Commission, we did a lot of discovery work, both around our user research, but also around the existing technology. And what we realized is we couldn't build on legacy applications, both because they rarely or never went to production, and we only have a 10-month timeline, but also because they weren't accessible. These are the existing legacy products that the PSC uses to assess candidates in the federal government. Take it all in. So we proposed a new platform to host this EMIB test, which is meant to simulate a manager's inbox. And doing so, we ended up overseeing and implementing the first new technical stack at the Public Service Commission in over 15 years. So this included things like containers, Docker, modern web technologies that enabled the Public Service Commission to actually deliver on these promises of a new platform that assesses these candidates. And this is what the platform looks like. So this is screenshots of a prototype that we are working on now. As you can see, it looks kind of different than the existing systems, but still follows all of the government look and feel standards, accessibility standards, and official languages. And so down here, it kind of mimics an inbox, and the candidate can go through, pretend to be a manager, and show off the skills that they have as being a manager, and hopefully get the best possible managerial candidates in the federal public service, because as we all know here, it's very important. And these things may not seem like a big deal, but at the Public Service Commission, they are. A lot of these practices that we've been working with are being implemented for the first time. So things like accessibility standards, unit testing, automatically running those unit tests, pair programming, user experience design. All of these things, practices, are things that are enabling our team to deliver better services. And our job is really to enable that capacity for our department to continue with these skills after we leave. Can you raise your hand? This is Joey, she's our user experience designer. Joey will be running some demos and product testing, so if you want to give us some feedback, come find Joey afterwards. We'll be in the back table. Thank you very much.
Could we just do a check if Daniel Carranza is around?
Louder.
Is Daniel Carranza somewhere around in the space? I don't think I don't know if our last speaker is actually in the space here at the moment. Well, if that's the case, please, one round of applause for all the speakers this evening. one of the last things that we do want to do before we open up the floor again just for networking is if there's any announcements that people wanted to make, we wanted to open up the floor here in the spirit of OGP and try an open mic for any announcements that anybody might have at this point in time.
Testing. Perfect. Okay, so hands up, please, if you have an announcement. I'll come to you. I do have a timer with me, so if you go over 30 seconds, I'm going to walk away to the next person whose hands up. But I think we've got one here. Yep. Cool. So start by saying your name, and then sort of what announcement, question, or offer do you have to the group.
Alex and Kelly at the Privy Council office. We created the first collaborative learning experience from the Government of Canada, so a MOOC open to anyone in the world, canada.ca/learn-together, or learn for PE on Twitter. About public engagement.
So we've got 30 seconds. Thank you. Who's next?
So Mark Richardson, want to talk to anyone who's interested in affordable housing data. I run the housingnow.to.com website, and Dave and I can also give you lots of advice on how to prod your city councilors to make them more interested in open data and civic tech.
If you've got an announcement, please raise your hand. Anyone? Oh, we've got a couple back here. Okay.
Hi, I'm Jonas from der Sozialhelden. We are dealing with accessibility information, so we run the project wemap.org. This is a filter from InStreetMap, and we've got now accessibility information of 2 million places worldwide, and also like real-time information on elevators. So if you know other data sources about accessibility information, please reach out to us and have a look at accessibility.cloud. That's our data backend, and you can also play with the API data. Yeah.
Can I just announcements and respect some of the people who are trying to engage with the group? Thank you. Who's next?
My name is Ashok, and I work for a nonprofit called the Emerging Markets Investors Alliance. We're working to advance open government in developing countries using the voice of large institutional investors. We are looking for volunteers and consultants who can help us with Drupal, Salesforce, web design, user experience, with developing all kinds of anything relating to tech. If you have skills, please talk to me. Thanks.
I'm sure some people know. Who's next?
Hi, my name is Eugene. I'm with a civic tech group called Beta CDA out of Edmonton. I just have an idea that I want to explore. The idea simply is when open data portals put data out, they want to get apps for the data they put out. And I kind of have this inkling of an idea. What if you reversed it and you, instead of doing things that way, I'm interested in creating a portal. I'll open source it and everything else for if you give me this data or for services that you want, then you'll get these apps or services because people already built them already. That's all.
Can I steal yours?
Yeah.
For now. So our mic is on the fritz a little bit, so if you do have an announcement, can we get you to come forward? You don't get any extra time, though.
Hi, I'm Merlin. I'm with a nonprofit that you may have heard of called Code for Canada. I'm interested in talking about monitoring and evaluation with Tariq and everyone. Open government, civic tech, digital government, that conversation. Woo!
Hi, my name is Neda. I'm visiting from Washington, D.C. We just launched a podcast called Open Gov Stories, and the whole idea is really to share our personal stories about how you got into working in this field to hopefully help inspire and motivate other people to join us. If you're interested in listening to the stories that we have or adding your own, please come find me. I have postcards.
I think someone wanted a postcard. Is there anyone else who has an announcement, an opportunity, a question for the group? Okay. Oh, is this person coming forward with a question? No? Okay. Excellent. So I'm going to pass it back to Doug. Thanks for all your input.
Thank you, everyone. Perfect. So this more or less concludes the event. You guys are welcome to hang around here. Please feel free to eat any of the remaining poutine that I think is hopefully still left. Feel free to have a conversation with other individuals. As I mentioned earlier, perhaps talking about the Indigenous individuals in your particular respective country. Being able to talk about truth and reconciliation is important to us here in Canada, and we just want to ensure that that is a conversation that also happens with our guests that are here from other countries as well. One reminder, after 9 o'clock, we will be unfortunately shutting it down here, but if you would like to keep the conversation going, we'll be joining at 3 Brewers, which is a short walk away from here, just up on Spot Street. Here's a lovely map, so that everyone can actually go and attend. Other than that, I'd just like to thank you. Oh, there's a cash bar in the back for $6 for any of the remaining beer, if you guys would also like to stock up before you head out. Other than that, I just wanted to thank our speakers again, to Julia, Tariq, Adriana, Sean, and of course our fellows from Code for Canada who are in the back there, Kaylee and Siobhan, or hang out there. If you guys want to do any of the demo testing of what they're talking about, then feel free to hang out on the table in the back. And I just want to thank as well Code for Canada, Gabe and Luke as well for helping setting this whole event up, and to you guys for actually attending this evening. Thank you very much.